الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. I popped out during the Tarawih to the washroom, and I was thinking to myself, what is this very strong smell of strawberries? And then I realized that, it's the new fix. It used to be tobacco, and now it's vaping. Somebody clearly in the next cubicle must have been taking a break. So that's why they rush out, some people. So this is the state of the human nafs, the health problems aside, which are emerging now from vaping. The nafs is like a child, and you have to learn to manage it. If you deprive it, and I'm not talking about vaping now, I don't want what I'm saying to be misconstrued. If you deprive it of permissible, appropriate rest and respite, then it will rebel. And if you overfeed its cravings, then you will be a rebel, and it will take you to places far, far away. So this is why in our deen there's total moderation and balance. And therefore, there's so much ample abundance, so much variety within the appropriate and the halal, whether it's clothing or food or family relations, the tayyibat of this dunya. In fact, in today's recitation we heard, Ya ayyuhar rusul, kulu min at-tayyibati wa'malu saliha. O messengers, eat of the pure and do good actions. And the same instruction has been given to the believers. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu kulu min at-tayyibati wa'malu saliha. O believers, consume of the pure and perform good actions. The consumption of pure, halal, tayyib income, in the sense that the earning itself is halal and what is being consumed is permissible, if this is done, it will be a source of assistance in good a'mal salihah. There is a certain nur, barakah in halal income which has been earned honestly and from which zakat has been given. And it gives a person the ability and quwwah and strength to perform good actions, and it has an impact on a person's thoughts as well. And therefore, one of the blessings of halal income is the ability to distinguish between the ilham of Ar-Rahman and the waswasa of shaitan. I'm often impressed with young folk, youngsters, who have a very pure fitrah, a pure nature. They are inclined towards good and khair, ibadah and piety. Youngsters, even though there's no obvious powerful influence from above. Their parents, very ordinary people, and when I reflect, and Allah knows best, I see that it's because they are being raised on halal income. It's because their parents are meticulous and very careful about where they take their earnings from. And this has an impact. The child has good akhlaq. The child has a love for khair and truth. The child has a natural repugnance for all that is evil and bad. And this is not because of being heavily educated in the details of Islam. Not because of attending classes in which there's some advanced detail being taught. Not because of reading books. Just a very ordinary lifestyle. What is it? There's a certain barakah there. And talking about income and wealth, we heard Surah Hajj today. وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ يَأْتُونَكَ رِجَالًا وَعَلَى كُلِّ ضَامِرٍ يَأْتِينَ مِنْ كُلِّ فَجٍّ عَمِيقٍ. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam is given the instruction to make an announcement in the people for Hajj. Give a call, the way a call is given to prayer. And with the promise that people will come to you on foot, they will come to Hajj, they will visit the Haram, and on every dhamir, lean camel. And they'll come from each deep ravine, meaning from great distances. Now, by the way, this is an interesting fact. We don't realize it today. Makkah Mukarramah is a mountainous region, and the Kaaba is in a basin. It's in a basin. And only until a few decades ago, you had to traverse the mountains to get into Makkah. You couldn't get in. It was during the reign of King Faisal and then King Fahd that dozens of tunnels, the word in Arabic for a tunnel is nafaq, dozens of tunnels were bored and cut into the mountains so that you could simply drive in. Otherwise, it was impossible. So until a couple of decades ago, for 14 centuries and even before this, all the way up to the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and before, anyone and everyone who ever went to the Kaaba had to go through a mountainous path. They had to take a path through the mountains. And they would observe this. We don't see it anymore because the ground is covered with buildings and so forth. The tower itself, the clock tower, is built on Jabal Abi Qubais, a blessed mountain. So you don't see the mountains anymore. So what is this telling us? Lean camels, why are lean camels being mentioned? And this is not too far ago. It's not too long ago. Sheikh Zakaria Rahimullah passed away in the early 80s. And his first Hajj in his youth was on camelback. He traveled on a camel. In those days, you did have the buses and cars, but you also had the camels. And this is sunnah. So he traveled on a camel. Interesting journeys are recorded by people going for Hajj in the old days. And I'm mentioning this today. Remember, I began by talking about income and halal income. These days, young folk in particular, the big word is COL, cost of living, the financial situation, inflation. These are the concerns which affect all young folk. Whether you will be able to buy your own house or not, and the cost of getting married. If we made it simpler, it'd be cheaper. And the general cost of living in terms of, in the Scottish students are privileged with having no university fees, but there are other implications. So, but the whole point is that it's a very difficult situation, whichever way you look at it. But granted, despite this, we must not be oblivious to the fact that it is still fard to do Hajj if you have the financial ability as soon as you become baligh, even if it costs many thousands of pounds. And it's not a waste of money, it is an investment. And the money that you spend on Hajj and Umrah comes back to you. In fact, we learn from the hadith that this journey is itself a solution to poverty. It's a solution to poverty. Mufti Muslihuddin, who's written a book on Hajj, by the way, a thick book, I believe it's available in English as well. He was the Shaykh al-Hadith in Dewsbury. He passed away recently, very senior alim. And of advanced years, he was visiting Scotland, so we went with him to Loch Lomond a few years ago. And we took the little ferry trip around the loch. And as we were queuing up to board, he remembered his very first Hajj, which he said was by sea. He'd taken a ferry. This is from the subcontinent. And he said, I had no money at the time. And so I asked somebody for a loan. And I said to the person, I'll pay it back, but I can't give you a timeline. Sometimes I'll pay you back a little. And by the way, this is the key if you have a loan to pay off. If you owe someone money, be happy to pay in small amounts as well. Don't think that it's only a few £100, it's not going to make a difference. Or I'll pay in big amounts, he says. And the person gave him the loan on that condition, the halal loan. He says, Allah Ta'ala took me for Hajj and I managed to pay it all back, and then I've been many times since. He was remembering his Hajj journey by sea and the cost of this. And by the way, when he went by sea, it wasn't just the time it took, it was also seasickness. And then these old steamers, when they would refuel the engines, there'd be a powerful stench on the boat, on the ship, on the ferry. And this would make you feel nauseous as well. So there was the nausea because of the smell of the fuel, and there was the nausea because of seasickness. The boat is rocking and from one side to the other. And then there'd be quarantine when you dock. There were all sorts of implications. And then when it would be unloaded at the port into smaller boats, people would lose their luggage sometimes. So all sorts of implications. So the Quran mentions the lean camel. Now camels can eat a lot at once, they can drink a lot at once. And what happens then is their hump stands up. Or if they have two, the other type, then dromite and bacterian? You're not going to help me with you. So what happens is the hump stands up, and then as the resources are depleted, is this like an Asian belly? In Ramadan? You guys are asleep, you're not following what I'm saying. Then what happens? It tips over. It tips over. And so now what happens is it becomes a lean camel. The Quran is talking about coming through the spaces between the mountains and the valleys and becoming lean because of the difficulty and length of that journey. And this is the point. So today, our Hajj does not take us several months. We do hope to come back. People would not know if they were going to come back. People would go on a Hajj journey and it would take them 8 months, 6 months, 9 months. And they would travel through mountains and through deserts and through jungles and across seas and oceans. They would camp on the way. And they would go through so many different continents and countries. And it would cost as well. They'd have to pay for their lodgings and food. And then eventually the glee and the, subhanallah, the happiness of seeing the Kaaba for the first time. Imagine. I mean, until the 60s, you know, the actual Kaaba, this is before the oil boom in Arabia, the actual Haram itself, the Mataf, it was sand. There was just a bit of paving and a little bit was paved around the Kaaba and the paths towards the center. And in the 60s, my own father, the first time he performed Hajj, he says that they were still using a bucket. And a bucket was used to draw the water from the well. So I'm mentioning this today because we listened to Surah Al-Hajj, and I want us all to revise the point that Hajj is a pillar of Islam. Yes, we all know that. And I'm not trying to be patronizing. But my point here is that despite the economical pressures, every young person, and Hajj is an ibadat for a young person as much as it is for an old person. You don't keep delaying it. In fact, it will open doors up for you in your life. Your jobs and your marriages and all of your future plans will come to fruition if you perform Hajj early. So don't let this put you off. Many young people do manage to, mashallah, with their part-time jobs and their holiday jobs and what have you, manage to put aside several £1,000s. What are those for? If you have those, then the season, no matter how unpopular, subhanallah, parents sometimes don't encourage their young people to do the right thing. Today I'm not talking about marriage. I'm talking about Hajj. So if you can afford to, and you're in pocket, then that £5,000-7,000 for Hajj, or whatever it may be this year, is an opportunity. And we ought to seize it. لِيَشْهَدُوا مَنَافِعَ لَهُمْ, Allah Ta'ala says, so they can be present for benefits. There are dini, dunyawi, ukhrawi benefits in Hajj. And this is another big bit of detail that we ought to be aware of. Hajj, you come back enriched from your Hajj. And this title of Al-Hajj, being a Haji, is not just a cliche or a term which is used. It's a huge accolade, my friends, that Allah has granted you tawfiq to fulfill your farz Hajj. And so, after having listened to Surah Al-Hajj tonight, if we haven't done our farz Hajj, then let us make the intention that we will, inshallah, at the earliest opportunity. Yes? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq again and again, and may Allah preserve the Haramain Sharifain. May Allah preserve all of the sacred aspects of deen, be they in the form of masajid and madaris, be they in the form of our values, be they in the form of our communities and societies and our elders, and our books and libraries and our manuscripts, whatever the form they may take. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve the ummah and make this coming year a year of progress for the ummah. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على النبي الكريم اللهم صل على سيدنا. برحمتك.